Well, once again, it's an honor to have the Reverend Dr. John Cater with us from Hong Kong, especially on this very special week as we enter Holy Week and reflect in particular on the Passion narrative as we really celebrate Palm Sunday. So welcome, John.
Thank you so much. Always great to be with the folks at St. John's, even when I'm a few thousand miles away.
So I understand you've been looking at not just one of the Gospels, but comparing all the Gospel narratives around this particular event. And what have you found?
Well, I have. I did a little homework this week because I was struck when I read the story of Jesus entering Jerusalem in Matthew, which is the reading that's assigned for this year. I noticed some things that I hadn't really paid attention to before, and I began looking at how Mark and Luke and John told the story, because this is one of the critical events in Jesus' own life and ministry, and it is one of those relatively few pieces of Jesus' story that actually show up in all four Gospels. So I was really interested in how differently the four Gospels tell the story. I've got in my hand the palm cross from the cathedral here in Hong Kong, which we get every year, because of course we celebrate Palm Sunday. I was actually quite surprised to discover that John is the only gospel that mentions palm trees or palm branches. Matthew has people waving tree branches and spreading their cloaks before Jesus. Mark has leafy branches and cloaks. Luke just has cloaks. John doesn't say anything about cloaks, but talks about palm branches. So I'm not sure how we decided that Palm Sunday was the best thing to have in our mind for this really quite remarkable day. And the more you think about these stories, the more remarkable they are. John has Jesus riding on a donkey.
That's a good thing, given the fact that a lot of churches never receive their palms this week because of delivery problems, and most of us, now that we're working from home, can't get palms, and so maybe that's an invitation for all of us to either wave some clothing, as you say, or some leafy greens, I don't know, broccoli, celery, whatever people have in their refrigerator. Maybe it'll all work. I don't know.
Well, I think we all do what we have to do in days like this. But in John's gospel, Jesus rides on a donkey. In Mark and Luke, Jesus rides on a colt. And in Matthew, strangely enough, Jesus rides on a donkey and a colt, which I've always thought takes some doing. And so then I said, well, why does Matthew have Jesus riding on a donkey and a colt? Well, the reason is because Matthew misunderstood what the prophet Zechariah had said, because Zechariah, being a good prophet, mostly speaks in poetry. And the verse that Matthew has in mind is where Zechariah is looking toward a time when Israel is put back together again the way Zechariah and all the Jewish people thought it should be, with their own king. And he's dreaming about the day when the king rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. And it's the way that Hebrew poetry often repeats things. And so I'm happy to say that we don't have to try to figure out how Jesus rode both a donkey and a colt, which is what the reading asks us to think about. Since this year we're reading Matthew, it just means Jesus got on a donkey and he rode into Jerusalem. and people cheered, and they waved whatever they had at hand, and they knew that something was happening, and they knew how to interpret it, because both Matthew and John relate the entrance into Jerusalem specifically with that passage from the prophet Zechariah. It's probably the only thing that Zechariah ever said that we ever think about. But what it says to me is that in this whole story, Jesus is up to something. This is not just a case of Jesus getting tired and saying, you know, I really think I'm going to ride for a while. And people see him and they say, oh, here comes Jesus on a donkey. Let's all go out and wave some tree branches. Both Mark and Luke, and to a lesser extent Matthew, have what I think looks like something borrowed from a spy drama, where Jesus sends his disciples to somebody who has a donkey waiting, and they have a secret word that they have to say to the person with the donkey, and the person with the donkey says something else, and the disciples say something else, and then they get the donkey. So I think it's quite clear that Jesus knows exactly what he's doing, and how he's doing it. And so then the question becomes, well, what is Jesus up to? And I don't think there's any question about what Jesus is up to. Jesus is up to making trouble. Jesus knows that if he rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, with crowds cheering, people are going to remember that passage from Zechariah, because if there's one thing that the Jewish people of his own time thought about, it's what the prophets had to say about when the good times were going to come back. I think that's something that we can all relate to in these days. I certainly think about, you know, when are the good times going to come back? When are the Romans going to get thrown out? When are the Jewish religious authorities going to get off our backs and stop sort of taking all the money when we don't have any to start with? And so I think Jesus is in effect setting up a confrontation with the religious authorities, and a confrontation with the political authorities. And I think Jesus has an understanding that it's not going to end well for him. And of course, he couldn't be more right. The reason I think that it's quite clear that he's stirring up trouble is that the next thing he does is go to the temple and chase out all the merchants, which was the lifeblood of the temple. You couldn't offer sacrifice in the temple unless you could buy the right bird or animal to sacrifice, and you couldn't buy those unless you bought them in the temple courtyard. So when he, as the old scriptures used to say, when Jesus cleanses the temple, he's in effect saying, this isn't working. This isn't working, and we have to just start over. And of course he does the same thing as he goes into Jerusalem at Passover time, when the Romans are nervous because they know Passover is supposed to be a celebration of freedom, and everybody knows that the Jewish people are not free. So Jesus is setting up what I think he probably understands as the final confrontation. And whether he foresaw how that was probably going to end, I don't think we know, but I can't imagine that he didn't realize that it was not going to be easy. It was not going to be pretty. So
sorry, we have a little bit of a time lag here, all the way from Hong Kong. Sorry to interrupt, John, but I was in a conversation earlier today with some colleagues, and one of them pointed out systems theory, which is one of the ideas of it is that the system, when it's interrupted, will focus all of its energies to regain the system that used to be, rather than to be transformed. And I think right now we as a church, we as a people, are feeling completely deconstructed. And there's this desire to go back to the way things were rather than to be open to something new. And as you describe Jesus as somebody, as kind of the only person that knew what he was doing in this thing, I want to acknowledge that everyone else was in a tailspin. I mean, I would imagine, we see what happens to Jesus's followers, and that somehow Palm Sunday may be the place, one of the places in our annual liturgy that captures how out of control things become and how out of control they're becoming right now. And yet this image of Jesus knowing what he's up to is somehow a subtle affirmation that our faith will withstand all of this.
He's the only one who made it through without losing it altogether. Everybody else lost it. Jesus is the one who even praying, I don't want to do this, take this cup away from me, nevertheless just keeps right on going. And there is, I think, this tremendous sense of purpose in what he's doing. Did Jesus want to go to the cross? No. Did he recognize that probably was what was going to happen to him? I think so. Did he know what was going to happen after that? I think he lived in hope, and maybe that's what we do in this Holy Week, in this time when everything, as you say, has been turned upside down, and we don't know what comes next. We suspect that it's not going to be great, and it may be quite painful and scary, but we also see Jesus moving through that awful time and holding on to a sense of commitment and a sense of hope.
Well, that certainly speaks to us at this time for sure, and we still have Good Friday to go. But we do have Maundy, Thursday before Good Friday. How do you advise us as a people of faith to move through Holy Week as we try to do that during this time?
I think the worst thing we can do is to try to pretend that it's really not so different, because it's very different. It's different than any Holy Week that I've ever gone through, and I've gone through some fairly bizarre Holy Weeks. I'm thinking of the Holy Week in the spring before the invasion of Panama, when we also had no idea what was going to happen, and it wasn't an easy time. But I think if ever, I sometimes I've actually said in sermons in other times in other places that we shouldn't think too much about Easter until it happens. That we should live each of these moments as they come, and really focus on Maundy Thursday as Maundy Thursday and Good Friday as Good Friday, and then think about, it's Easter and there's resurrection, there's new life. I think probably in a time like this, I think a lot about Easter, and I'm really looking forward to Easter. And we can't pretend that Easter isn't there, and we can't pretend that resurrection doesn't happen, and we can't pretend that God isn't still God. And so I think as I approach this Holy Week, and the strangeness and the scariness of it all, I think I want to remember, Easter's around the corner, and it's coming, and it's coming for us, even in this time of the virus, and new life will come out of this chaos, and we don't know what it will look like any more than Jesus knew what it would look like. as he rode into Jerusalem. So I guess we just go ahead and keep our eyes faced forward, and remember that God is still God and Easter is on its way.
That's a wonderful place to close, and I thank you once again, John, for all your insight. I love the way you look at every gospel in all of this. I was going to ask you if you looked at the Gospel of Thomas at all and how Thomas treated it, because I was referred to this new book out called the New Testament, and so I've been reading it, and it's really quite intriguing. And I remember one summer when we did a series on all the books that didn't make it in the Bible.
Right.
And I was particularly drawn to the Gospel of Thomas, and some of these books that didn't make the cut, and yet are very informative about why some of them may have made the cut. And, for instance, the Gospel of John, the Gospel of Thomas. So John and Thomas were potentially competitive with each other, or had different viewpoints. But I love that you take this perspective, a variety of traditions and how they're looking at it. But it would be interesting to see what Thomas had to say.
I doubt if Thomas treated the entry into Jerusalem, because as I recall, and I don't know much about Tom, and I'm as soon as I hang up, I'm going to order the New Testament, because it sounds like something I should look at. But Thomas is basically a collection of sayings. I'm not sure how much there is in the way of events. It's sort of like Q.
Maybe down the road here we could have a conversation about the New Testament.
Yeah. It'll probably take a week or two for it to get here. Mail is not exactly rushing to Hong Kong these days.
Well, I got it instantly through Amazon. If you have a Kindle.
I guess I could read it on my computer, but I won't. I use Book Depository when I'm here, which is English, because postage is free, and it comes often. It comes from Australia, so it's not quite as far as Amazon would be. Well, although Australia is not close, but I usually get stuff in anywhere from like a week to 10 days, but I will do that. I'll do that. I love doing this. I mean, it turns out to be really fun. I was very nervous the first time. And
well,
really
everybody's loving it. Everybody's loving it on this end too. So we'll see you again. We'll arrange another time.
Okay.
And a blessed Holy Week to you, John.
Thank you, and to you, and to all the folks at St. John's.
Take care.
See you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.